John Higby gave me a huge 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and sponsors today's video. Urza Chief Artificer versus Animar, Omnath Locus of Creation, and Urza Chief Artificer. Well, we've got some control in the early game, but that's about it really. A couple of really expensive spells, and yeah, I suppose we could try and mana drain into our commander, but yeah, I don't really like this one mulligan. Right, into a 2-lander and still expensive stuff in hand. Would have been better off keeping the first hand compared to this. So we will go down a card and into a 2-lander thanks to the Sink into Stupor. So maybe Emery can get us into something. Windfall could completely reset our hand if we are struggling as well, so we'll try this. What do we put away? Phyrexian Metamorph might be able to copy something decent from the Urza. Let's get rid of a Void Wren there, I think. Or actually, probably Cranial Plating is probably best to get rid of, isn't it? Yeah, luckily we do draw up to 7 on turn 1. Solemn Simulacrum, if we can get into a few lands, is good. Might be able to copy something decent with the Metamorph, like I said. So get Sink into Stupor, into play tapped. Tap lands all around on the opening turns. And do not draw into a land, so Last Chance Saloon next turn, an Anointed Procession. Nothing to do with 2 mana, so just tap out and pass. Suppose we could always go for Emery if we get into a 3rd land, and then if we don't get another one, a 4th one, we can go Windfall into a 4th land and then start taking advantage of Emery with the artifacts that we've discarded. Azorius Signet, then a Nature's Law for Omnath, who I don't imagine is going to struggle with mana this game. Atraxa's Fall from Animar. Destroy an artifact, battle, enchantment or creature. So straight away going for the Azorius Signet. Creature with flying, that is. Of course, it's a green spell. But yeah, being really aggressive towards an Azorius Signet. This might be one of those players that just wants to play things just because he has them in hand. And no land on turn 3 either, so yeah, we're looking towards Emery and or Windfall. Aethersworn Canonist after a 3rd land. Doesn't matter too much in the early game, unless someone wants to go Sol Ring into a bunch of other stuff. Risen Reef for Omnath is going to see if he can get into a land. Obviously triggers on the commander entering as well as other elementals. Decides not to reveal anything, so did not see a land. Alright, the game crashed on us, just reloaded, did not get into a land. That is a Bronze Guardian, big double striker, gives stuff ward. Saw an Animar over here as well. So if we're going to be forced to discard anyway, might as well rift something. Let's just make it the Animar, seeing as how he wants to be aggressive to our fellow Urza player. Gonna have to discard Cyclonic Rift to a Windfall anyway, most likely, so might as well use it, like I said. Sleight of Hand, look at the top 2 cards. One in hand, the other on the bottom. I had no idea that that was reprinted in the Eldraine set. Omnath Locus of Creation coming down after that. And does trigger the Risen Reef. Again, does not reveal anything though, so didn't get into a land. Does manage to make a Ketria Triome into the Omnath though. So gains 4 life, 8 cards in hand. And the 1/1 goes into the left. Discarding Tangled Florahedron, 2 hand size. And Animar being replayed again on turn 4. Well, still no lands, can't even cast that mana drain. Past the turn. Got 37 lands in this deck. Discard Bronze Guardian in the hope that we can maybe reanimate it with Emery at some point. But we're a million miles away from this at the moment. Ethereum Sculptor gonna make artifacts cost 1 less, and he can go for another spell here. The Canonist should nicely switch off cards like Animar that want to chain a bunch of creatures off in a turn. Omnath wants to cast a lot of spells as well, does not have anything else for us though. 2/2 comes in at us. Sol Ring for Omnath, followed by Yasharn, can search for a basic plains or forest. Have to remember the other clause on this as well, we can't sacrifice or pay life to do stuff. It is another elemental as well, so triggers the Risen Reef as well as itself. Oh, they get to search for both because it goes into hand, so forest and plains. Makes a Misty Rainforest in tapped for the turn. Then landfall again, so that's 48 life gained. And then it's the mana on the second one. Yeah, gets 4 mana. Got the Misty Rainforest into play tapped from the Risen Reef. Played the forest from hand. So with the mana, casts a Conduit of Worlds. Does not have multiple land drops in a turn, but we'll be able to make use of that with cards like the Misty Rainforest. And then it's just cycling on a tricycle land, because he can't cast any more spells after that. Unless he had another artifact in hand, that is. 1-1 to the right against the Omnath, and the 4-4 commander to the left. First creature being played into Animar is Volatile Wanderglyph. When it becomes tapped, you can discard a card if you do draw. So you have to assume that that's part of a combo. Maybe they want to draw their entire deck. Tap down blue mana to cast that as well, so we'll assume that they don't have a double blue counterspell in hand. And then a Rampant Growth will get another land into play for them. In the meantime, we can't even get into a land, let alone ramp. A Research Thief, we're just drawing into all of our expensive stuff. So pass. Turn 6, 2 lands. Got half a chance of seeing at least an okay game with an Urza player on this video though. A Dousing Dagger can play and equip it this turn, and does have a player to hit also. We'll have to not give us plant tokens in that instance if he wants to hit us. Plant tokens go over to Omnath. Equips the Canonist and hits us with it, and the land does tap for 3 mana and come into play untapped, so is able to throw down a 1 mana reality chip. Okay, I saw in the log previously that the Omnath player is disconnected, so hopefully has not just scooped on us. They get 5 minutes to reconnect now. Okay, timed out, phenomenal. Fertilid's Favour, a reference to the creature. Target player searches their library for a basic, puts it into play tapped, 2+ counters on an artifact or creature, so they obviously ramp themselves. Noteworthy, they could have given us the ramp there. Obviously don't feel like doing that. Animar is now a 4-4, and the discount is, due to the plus counters, so their creatures will cost 3 less. Just going in with the Volatile Wanderglyph to the left in order to draw and discard. Or discard and draw even, they do have to discard Gaia's Might first. Alright, turn 7. Let's see if we can get into a land. Ah, there we go. Only took 7 turns, so catch up time. Let's see if we can go for Emry, or we could go for Metamorph onto the Ethereum Sculptor for a Solemn Simulacrum next turn. This assumes that we're going to keep the Ethereum Sculptor in play, but it's more of a guarantee for a Solemn next turn than Emry is. It's not like this Urza player is doing particularly well on lands either though. I mean, the Lost Veil is going to really keep him in it, but Animar is going to get away from us, only has 3 cards in hand, so might have more time than it seems. Does manage to make another land by turn 7 though. And there is Urza Chief Artificer, so yeah, thanks to the artifact lands, he is able to get a nice discount on that. Although had the discount thanks to the creatures as well. Able to cast and equip a Swiftfoot Boots as well. In response to the Boots equip, we see a Torch Breath can only do 2 damage with that, although it would have cost 2 less if it had targeted the Urza, but that still wasn't enough thanks to the 5 toughness, so goes after the Aethersworn Canonist, wants to get lots of creatures down next turn. We get a Spirit token from Animar's Forbidden Orchard. So at the end of the turn we see the first trigger, and they are now 5/5 menaces, only going to get bigger. Sylvan Library, going to potentially refill the hand of Animar, hasn't taken too much damage this game, and thanks to the Aethersworn Canonist going down, likely has something else for us here. That is a Blanchwood Armour onto the Animar. Now again, the discount cares about, plus counters on Animar as opposed to its power, but that is an 8/8 with protection from white and black. So there are colourless and blue creatures that can block. If he wants to be swinging in with Animar and getting through, then it's odd that he's giving people spirit tokens. Very, very specific decks that Forbidden Orchard goes into. Anyway, the Wanderglyph is attacking in, not at Urza, I imagine. Probably, yep, comes in at us. Discards the only card in his hand. And that was a Spell Stutter. Not sure how many fairies he's looking to get into in this deck. We'll take the 2 while we're looking at big constructs and Animars. Keep hold of as many blockers as we can. So round to our turn with that 1 card in hand. In Mishra's Workshop, well, we can catch up with the Mishra's Workshop, can't we? So that will still only put us on 2 artifacts, which means we can't get down. This definitely isn't, not an artifact. But we could go for Emry this turn. So Mishra's Workshop, 3 mana, Solemn Simulacrum. The Mishra's Workshop can tap for black as well if we want to cast a non-artifact spell with it. And I think we want to fix blue mana with this because we do need double blue, don't necessarily need double white at the moment. Still thinking about fixing colours on turn 8. So then it's Emery after that. Oh, I forgot all about the discount on Emery. It only costs 1 mana. Yeah, there's nothing we could have done anyway, but we can't tap down Emery regardless, so... yeah, we just passed the turn at that, I think. Looks like we are managing to catch up with our opponents. Milled a land, Thousand Moons Smithy, fell the Profane, so there were a couple of lands on top, and a Thought Monitor as well. Not managing to get into any artifact lands ourselves, unfortunately. Could go for a 5 mana Thought Monitor next turn though. Or actually it'll be a 4 mana Thought Monitor thanks to the Ethereum Sculptor, so that might be worth doing. Especially if we don't get into lands. Because that way if we get into another blue land we might be able to hold up Mana Drain and the Void Rend. Anyway, Reality Chip being equipped onto the Ethereum Sculptor. And I think he was able to get a land into play there. Yeah, Seat of the Synod. I can't recognise any Magic the Gathering cards anymore because there's 57 different versions of individual cards. And speaking of which, a Thopter Spy Network, and the 6/6 with Menace swings in at us. I'm not going to block here because I want to keep as many artifacts in play as possible, plus we need to be able to chump block Animar, I think. So hitting us allows him to draw a card with the network, and if our opponents begin to draw cards again it'll put our Windfall back online, seeing as how we've decided to keep hold of it. And the constructs are 7/7s at this point, makes another one at the end of the turn. Silver Library going to potentially keep Animar's hand full as well for our Windfall. Although the cards he draws into, he might be able to just Windmill Slam straight away thanks to Animar being in play. Well, has that been overloaded? Just as soon as we start to do something. Cyclonic Rift. Slip out the back is a plus counter and the Urza is going to phase out, so he won't have to recast that. But this player is wide open for Animar attacks, as are we. That was always going to happen off the back of a Rift though. See if the Mishra's Workshop has made our opponent panic. Nope, Animar to the left. And the 2/2 to the left as well. Didn't take any life to that Silver Library, amazingly. Knows what card is on top of his library, discards 1 card in his hand. That is a big score. Not seen a whole lot of creatures from this Animar build. It's usually pretty much all creatures. 6 cards in this player's hand now, so do we feel as though it's time for Windfall or not? Psymaster Thopterist. We're just not getting into mana. We can always go Solemn into Phyrexian Metamorph and that'll get us into mana. We're just holding off on Windfall again. And it looks like it. And we'll fix our white mana this time. Might be that we can cast this from the bin at some point. So we'll need double white for that. So we're down to 22 and we've done little to nothing this game. But Solemn Simulacrum continuing to do work as it does to this day. Heard people slating Solemn Simulacrum saying it's overrated. Really isn't for no coloured mana. And we'll fix blue mana this time because we want to be able to potentially cast a Mana Drain. As a Chief Artificer phases back in. Thopter Spy Network back into play again. Followed by Marionette Apprentice. We don't have any treasure generators that we're seeing in play over here, so not as threatening as it could be. And then seeing the Ethereum Sculptor again. So the more artifacts he has in play, the better his big creatures are going to be, of course. Does not swing in with his commander, thankfully. Had a feeling he'd come in at us with that. Alright, Sylvan Library. He's beginning the turn with 3 cards in hand there. I think he just played a land straight away. Only took the 1 card from it though. Strangle. Yet another sorcery. 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker went on the Marionette Apprentice. And if Animar doesn't swing in against us here, it means we've got double blocks for a big construct potentially. Alright, doesn't swing in, so that's really good for us. 1 card in hand. Wouldn't mind seeing an untapped land here. I mean, we've been saying that all game. Of course, we draw into a tap land. An artifact land discounts our commander at least. So throw that down means we have Metalcraft. So we could go for Anointed Procession for 4 mana. Here's where the Urborg comes into play with Mishra's Workshop. 4 mana and then 3 mana for our commander. I think he's fine. Oh, it's affinity for artifact creatures, not artifacts. Alright, so scratch that then. We could still get our commander down and hold up Void Rend, which might be an idea. So, yeah, we'll just do that. It's going to be worth getting some big blockers in as the game progresses. This assumes Animar isn't holding up counter magic though. This is a weird Animar list we're seeing. Also, if I planned that turn out better, we're not holding up mana drain now, are we? Can you tell my brain just kind of switched off? Yeah, we're just holding up the Void Rend, we're not holding up the mana drain. Yeah, which would have been ideal. But we at least get the somewhat big creature into play, although it's only a 4/4. So worst case scenario, we just use it as a chump blocker. Thopter Spy Network does see an artifact in play, so makes the first Thopter token. Reality Chip back into play. Phyrexia Metamorph for the Urza player as well. And comes down as a copy of a Construct token, which is the first time I've ever seen any clone coming down as a token, I think. And that is Lost Shield, can barely read it with that frame. So let's see where this Construct goes in. I've got a feeling it'll come in towards us. No, it goes in at Animar. I'm glad to see that we're wrong on multiple occasions this game. So finally getting rid of those plant tokens by the looks of it. We get a 1/1 Menace and the Ethereum Sculptor. So what do they have in hand? Do we risk blocking here? Yeah, and then deciding to pull back. That wasn't a good pair of attacks unless they've got some kind of Death Touch shenanigans. So just a 9/9 towards Animar. So does double block with the 2 plant tokens that's been in play most of the game. Draws a card to Lost Shield when the Construct enters at the end of the turn. These are now 10/10s. Yeah, so I tapped the mana wrong last turn, there's no getting around that, but this is why I tend to avoid tap lands, because we could have had the Emery down last turn, and that means that we could get more artifacts into play on our next turn. Yeah, it's all a bit clunky this game, as we've seen, but we've managed to stick it out this length of time, which is pretty good. Sylvan Library takes our opponent down to 27 with 4 cards in hand. Explore, draw, and play another land this turn. Makes you wonder why our opponent is playing Animar as his commander. Over the Edge is target creature you control explores, then explores again, so more means of plus counters. So they reveal a Birds of Paradise and an Unnatural Growth, which means they did put the Birds of Paradise into the graveyard. So we know what they're drawing into next turn. It doubles the power and toughness, does not give them any kind of evasion on this board though. Looks as though that's what they've kind of been relying on. And the 2/2 swings into the left, so just looking to sacrifice that apparently. Doesn't like the card in his hand, so we'll cast Unnatural Growth this turn. Discards a Rumbling Rock Slide, which could have got rid of one of the big constructs. So this is where it matters that we didn't hold up the mana drain, because I would have countered this just for the sake of having more mana next turn. Not really bothered about it entering, but we're not using the Void Rend here, unless I just want to blow something up for the sake of it. So casts the Unnatural Growth down to 0 cards in hand, and gives us the token, which I'm grateful for, against Menace. So let's go Void Rend onto a Menace creature here, just for the sake of thinning those out. And it might be that this player is holding up priority, so I might have counter magic with blue mana held up, but can't counter the Void Rend. Alright, so see what we draw into here, but I'm thinking it's Anointed Procession at this point. Okay, I was thinking of going after the Swiftfoot Boots, but our opponent at least can get the Urza out pretty easily anyway, even after we've dispatched it, so we could remove Menace for some combat shenanigans, but there's not much we're doing against those big creatures anyhow. So yeah, not making too much use of a Mithra's Workshop, although it did get us back into the game. Play out the Anointed Procession, and then we can go for a 1 mana Emery, which we would have preferred to be in play last turn, so it has no Summoning Sickness here, but just have to go for the mill and hope that we can make use of it on our turn 12. And we just get rid of 4 lands there, ironically, which is, yeah, that pretty much sums up this game. Yeah, so I'm not even sure which artifact we go after from the bin next turn, but we're just holding up Dispatch and Mana Drain, so yeah, we've managed to kind of keep up our interaction in quite a decent turn of events here, which is just dumb luck. We'll at least start buffing up these Construct tokens now, because, alright, Animar Scooping, of course. I mean, that's a ban, I think. But we know who to point our interaction at now, at least. Another Thopter from the Spy Network, and they will be able to poke us with that for a card draw. Lost Shield draws a card as well, and then draws at the draw step also. So as soon as our hand is empty, we've still got that windfall from the opening game, of course. Just need to hope that our opponent keeps some cards in hand, which he probably won't. His board's pretty stacked, so he might hold on to something for after a board wipe. A March of Progress, and they have gone for Overload onto that. Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each artifact, make a copy of it. That's definitely worth a mana drain, I think. Unfortunately, the Overload cost doesn't replace the CMC, I don't think, so we're still only going to get 3 mana from that. But it's well worth a mana drain. And then see what they swing in with here. I want to make as few a number of blocks as possible and hope that we can outpace them thanks to our Anointed Procession. So we'll take the Flyers. Can maybe double block on a 10-10, but the little creatures we're not all that worried about. So let's go Dispatch onto a 10-10. And that debuffs this down to a 9-9. We'll still lose a Construct, but we can double block with Constructs. Double block with Constructs, we only lose one of them. And then the 1 damage flyer goes through. Suppose we might as well double block on the Menace as well. Again, we're risking them having some interaction for like Death Touch or something, but they're not going to have combat damage dealt to this anyway, so not like it's going to go down thanks to the Lashiel. So Lashiel doing some decent work for them there, because they would have lost this big construct if it wasn't for the elephant that's in play. So they do hit us with the Thopter and manage to draw a card. I'm hoping that they won't play another spell here. Maybe they've got some big stuff in hand, and that means that our Windfall is going to be better, like we've been saying all game. Looks like they do have something though. It costs 1 less thanks to the Ethereum Sculptor. Alright, have a bounce land, so that puts a land back into hand, so still at 4. Hopefully they bounce an artifact land. I think they did bounce Seat of the Synod there actually, so that debuff the constructs. If we do go for the Windfall next turn, it will be a permanent debuff, unless they get into another artifact land. Yeah, there was no real need to bounce that unless they're worried about some kind of wrath, so they do stick at 4 cards in hand. Another big construct from Urza, but we outpace them there. Alright, so let's see what we can do. An Arcane Signet is just another artifact for the turn. Mana drain is 3 mana. So let's see. We can go at Psy Master Thopterist. And we're getting double tokens, don't forget. Then tap for 3 for artifact mana can be Arcane Signet, which makes us 2 Thopter tokens. And this of course will start to really buff up our constructs, so they shoot up to 7/7s. Then we'll activate Emery onto the Thousand Moons Smithy, and next turn we're likely looking at Bronze Guardian, but I want as many tokens in play as possible here while we've got access to Emery. Noteworthy that we have run out of white mana here, apart from the Arcane Signet we just played. So drop the Smithy. Suppose we could have gone for the Windfall first to see if we were desperate to keep hold of that 4 mana for something else. I suppose I could wait on the Windfall for next turn, but they've got a lot of mana available to the next turn. There's every chance that they empty their hands, so yeah, maybe should have held off on the Thousand Moon Smithy. But we are nicely buffing up our constructs past what our opponents have. So a couple of Thopters from us casting that again, and then a couple of Gnomes into play. They are 17/17s, 13/13 construct tokens. Yeah, so let's go through to combat. Yeah, maybe our opponent has some means of removal, which they probably use in response to a Windfall anyway, so yeah, go Windfall first. So Windfall hopefully is discard 4 and draw 4, and if they do have a Swords or something, then at least we see it before onto the Urza before attacks, assuming that they wanted to get rid of Menace. They had the Seat of the Synod, they did bounce Psy themselves, a Padine, and a Vindicate. We've got an Anguished Unmaking, Felwar Stone, March of Progress ourselves, so maybe we'll see that. Might as well go for a Skull Clamp onto a Thopter or the Spirit token. Let's go in for attacks first. Gonna have plenty of big creatures to block with, so I think we can swing in with these two 13/13s. Alright, but our opponent scoops to that. He sees that we're about to outpace him. He obviously had no decent cards in hand from his draw, and I've just been kicked out into the lobby, so I can't see what I just drew into with the Skull Clamp. But we would have been tapped out next turn. We assume that they have to start making double blocks, and that really depletes our opponent's army very quickly. So yeah, it took us until, what, turn 7 to get into a third land, but we still ended up winning that game, in no small part thanks to the fact that Magic Online players have the attention span of a gnat. But hopefully you all got some enjoyment from it anyway. Big thank you to the patrons for their continued support of the channel, and hopefully you all look forward to Bloomborough next week. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.